What if in a single day, without warning, everything was gone? Your children, your home, your health, your reason to get up in the morning. And what if the people who were supposed to comfort you looked you in the eye and said, "You must have done something to deserve this"? And what if God himself went quiet? There was a man who lived in a land called Uzi. His name was Job. And the first thing the ancient record says about him, before his wealth, before his family, before anything else, is this: he was blameless and upright. A man who genuinely feared God and deliberately turned away from everything that was wrong. Job had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 pairs of oxen, 500 donkeys, and more servants than most kings could count. He was, the record says plainly, the greatest man among all the people of the East. Every single morning, he rose early to offer sacrifices for each of his children, just in case one of them had sinned without knowing it. This is what a man who truly feared God looked like. Not cold and religious, tender, careful, always with his hands turned upward toward heaven on behalf of the people he loved. Everything was in order. Everything was good. And nobody, not Job, not his family, not his servants, knew that far above the visible world, a conversation was about to take place that would change everything. On a day when the heavenly beings came to present themselves before God, one figure came with them who was different. He had been roaming the earth, he said, going back and forth across it. God asked him, "Have you noticed my servant Job? There is no one like him on the entire earth. Blameless, upright, a man who genuinely fears me and turns from evil." The response was immediate and cold. "Of course Job fears you. Why wouldn't he? You have put a protective wall around him and blessed everything he owns. But strip it all away, and he will curse you to your face." It was a direct challenge, not just to Job, but to the nature of faith itself. Is human devotion real? Do people love God for who he is, or only for what he gives? God accepted the challenge. Everything Job had was placed into the accuser's hands, with one condition: do not lay a hand on the man himself. And Job, sitting at home with his family, had absolutely no idea. It happened on an ordinary day. Job was at home. The first messenger arrived breathless and terrified. Raiders swept in, carried off the oxen and donkeys, cut down all the servants with swords. I alone escaped to tell you. Before that servant finished speaking, a second arrived. Fire fell from the sky and consumed every one of the sheep and all the servants tending them. I alone escaped to tell you. Before the second messenger could catch his breath, a third burst in. Raiders formed 3 columns and swept off all the camels, killing every servant with them. I alone escaped to tell you. And while the third was still talking, a fourth man ran in. His face was the worst of all. "Your sons and daughters were together at a feast," he said. A sudden wind came. It struck all 4 corners of the house at once. The house collapsed. "They are all dead. I alone escaped to tell you." For messages, one after another without pause, each worse than the last. In the space of a single afternoon, Job lost his livestock, his servants, his income, his security, and every one of his 10 children. Everything. Gone. In one day, Job stood up. He tore his robe, the ancient sign of grief, so overwhelming it required something physical to match it. He shaved his head. He fell to the ground. And then he worshipped, not in a hollow, performative way, in the raw, broken, honest way of a man who had nothing left to hold on to except the God he had known his entire life. He said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return. The Lord gave. The Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." He did not pretend the pain wasn't real. He tore his clothes. He shaved his head. He fell to the ground. The grief was enormous and completely visible. But underneath the grief, deeper than the grief, was a trust that the grief could not reach. A man genuinely formed by his relationship with God discovered in the worst moment of his life that the relationship was still there, underneath everything, unshaken. In all of this, the record says, Job did not sin. He did not accuse God of doing wrong. The heavenly council convened again. God said the same thing. Have you considered my servant Job? He still holds his integrity, even after everything, without any reason. The accuser had a new argument. A man will give anything to save his own skin. But touch his body, strike his health, and he will curse you to your face. God gave permission. One boundary remained: spare his life. Job was struck with terrible sores. Painful, oozing, inflamed boils that broke out across his entire body from the crown of his head to the soles of his feet. Every movement hurt. Every breath was labored. There was no comfortable position, no relief. He left the city. There was a place on the edge of town where ashes were dumped, the waste and burned out remnants of things that had been used up and thrown away. Job went there, among the ashes, and he sat down. With a broken piece of pottery, he scraped at his sores. The man who had been the greatest in the East, the man with the estates and the flocks and the children and the servants, was sitting alone in the ash heap, scraping himself with a piece of broken pot. Nobody ever wrote a more honest sentence about suffering than that one. Job's wife had lost everything too. It is important not to forget that. She lost the same children. She watched the same disasters arrive one after another. She watched her husband reduced to a figure sitting in ashes scraping at sores. And she had reached the end of what she could hold. She looked at him and said, "Are you still holding on to your faith? Just curse God and die." It was not a cruel speech from a cruel woman. It was a breaking point. The sound of someone who loved this man deeply, who could not bear to watch him suffer any longer, who had run out of any other way to make it stop. Job turned to her, not in anger, in sorrow. He said, "You are speaking like someone who has lost their way. Should we only accept good things from God and never accept the hard things?" And for the second time, the record notes quietly, in all of this, Job did not sin with his lips. 2 catastrophes, 2 direct attacks on his faith, and twice the man held. When his 3 friends heard what had happened, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, they left their own cities and made the journey to be with him. They had known Job as a man of strength, prosperous, wise, the kind of man who always had answers for everyone else's problems. When they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him. The shock was so complete that they raised their voices and wept. They tore their robes. They threw dust into the air over their heads. And then they sat down on the ground beside him. For 7 days and 7 nights, not one of them said a word. They just sat, because they could see that his pain was too great for words to reach. 7 days of silence. Before they opened their mouths, and everything went wrong, Job's 3 friends did something profound and right. They showed up. They stayed. They said nothing. They sat in the ashes with him. Sometimes that is the entire ministry. Just sitting in the ashes with someone who is too broken for words. After 7 days, Job opened his mouth. And what came out was not a prayer, not a hymn, not a theological statement. It was raw, unfiltered, and completely human. He cursed the day he was born. "Let the day perish on which I came into the world," he said. "Let that night be swallowed in darkness. Why didn't I die at birth? Why was I ever placed on a mother's knee? Why did I ever open my eyes to this world? For now I would be lying down in peace. I would be asleep and at rest." He was not cursing God. He was not renouncing his faith. He was saying out loud what pain of this magnitude actually feels like from the inside. It feels like you wish you had never existed. Not because you want to die, but because you want the pain to stop, and there is no other way to say that in a sentence honest enough. Job said it, and the God who had called him blameless and upright did not strike him down for saying it. The record simply lets it stand, because sometimes the most faithful thing a person can do is refuse to pretend the pain is less than it is. Eliphaz was the eldest of the 3 friends. He spoke with a kind of gentle authority, the voice of experience and accumulated wisdom. He began with a compliment. "Your words have held others up when they were falling. You have strengthened the weak. But now it has come to you, and look how shaken you are." And then he said the thing that felt, to him, like wisdom. Who has ever suffered innocently? The innocent do not perish. The upright are not destroyed. Only those who sow trouble reap it. In other words, Job, you must have done something wrong. He packaged it carefully. He called it a divine vision. But the core of it was simple and devastating. Your suffering is the result of your sin. It was not a new idea. In every world, this is the first thing human beings reach for when someone is suffering. There must be a reason. There must be something they did. Because if innocent people can suffer without cause, then none of us are safe. And that thought is too frightening to hold. So Eliphaz offered Job a theological system instead of a presence in the ashes. A tidy explanation instead of a God. And he was completely wrong. Job answered his friends without politeness and without performance. "You are plastering over my wounds with lies," he said. "You are physicians who prescribe nothing but falsehood. I wish you would be completely silent. That would be your wisest move." He turned his complaint toward God himself, not to abandon God, but to argue with him, to plead, to demand a hearing. How can a person be considered right before God? He crushes me for no reason and multiplies my wounds without cause. It is important to understand what Job was doing here. He was not turning his back on God. He was arguing with God the way you only argue with someone you believe is really there, really listening, really capable of answering. Job's complaint was, at its core, an act of faith. You cannot be angry with someone you do not believe in. You cannot demand a hearing from someone you think has abandoned you. Job was shouting into what felt like silence, but he was shouting upward. And the God who would eventually speak from the storm was already hearing every word. Bildad went next. He was blunter than Eliphaz. "How long will you say these things? Your words are nothing but a blustering wind. If your children sinned against God, he gave them over to the consequences of their sin. But if you yourself would seek God and plead for mercy, he would restore you." The implication was unmistakable. Your children died because they sinned, and you are suffering because you have sinned. Zophar was blunter still. "Know this, Job, God has already forgotten some of your sin. What you are suffering is actually less than you deserve." 3 friends, 3 variations of the same argument, all of them pointing at the man in the ashes and telling him he had brought this on himself. And none of them knew about the conversation in heaven. None of them knew that God had specifically said, "Job is blameless. There is no one like him on the earth." They had the wrong script. They were playing prosecutors in a case that had already been decided in Job's favor. They just didn't know it yet. In the middle of all the noise, the friends debating, the accusations flying, Job said something that cut through everything like a blade. "I want to speak to God directly. I want to argue my case before the Almighty." And then he said something even more extraordinary, something that seems almost impossible from a man sitting in ashes with open sores. "I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last, he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, after everything this body has endured, yet in my own flesh I will see God. I myself will see him. My own eyes will behold him." In the middle of the worst suffering the ancient world recorded, a man saw something on the other side of it. Not escape from the pain, not an explanation for the pain, but a God who was alive, who was coming, who would be seen. That confession, "I know that my Redeemer lives," from a man in an ash heap with no health, no wealth, no children, and 3 friends who thought he was a sinner, is one of the most staggering statements of faith in all of human history. Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm. Not a whisper, not a still small voice. Out of a storm. The sky opened, the thunder rolled, and God spoke. The first thing he said was a question. "Who is this that darkens counsel with words that have no knowledge? Get ready like a man. I am going to ask you questions, and you are going to answer me." And then, instead of answering Job's complaints, God invited him to take a different view entirely. "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Who marked off its measurements? Who stretched the measuring line across it? When the morning stars sang together and all the heavenly beings shouted for joy, where were you?" Question after question. Not cruel, not punishment. An invitation to a bigger view. A reorientation. A recalibration of what Job understood about the size of the one he had been arguing with. God was not scolding Job for his questions. He was answering them with a question so much larger that Job's question could finally be held in the right context. God kept going. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you guide the bear with its cubs? Do you know the laws of the heavens? Can you establish their rule over the earth? Who gives the horse its strength? Who clothed its neck with a flowing mane? Who made it leap like a locust, striking terror with its proud snorting? Can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook? Can you put a rope through its nose? Will it make an agreement with you and become your servant? Question after question, painting a universe of breathtaking complexity and power. A universe that runs on laws Job did not write, filled with creatures Job could not master, turning on an axis Job did not set. And in every question was an implicit statement. I made all of this. I hold all of this. I have not lost track of any of this. And I have not lost track of you. The questions were medicine. Because Job's real problem, underneath all the questions and the pain, was that he had begun to suspect that God was not paying attention, that the suffering meant absence, that silence meant abandonment. God's answer was a thundering, star-filled, Leviathan-invoking declaration. I have not gone anywhere. Job went quiet. I am nothing, he said. What can I answer you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once. I will not answer again. After God spoke a second time, Job answered from a completely new place. I know that you can do everything, he said. No purpose of yours can be stopped. I had heard about you before, but now my eyes have seen you. That is one of the most important sentences in the entire book. Before, Job knew about God. He had a theology. He had a system of worship. He had an understanding of who God was, built from years of faithful living. But now, after the suffering, after the storm, after the questions, he had seen God. Not the God of the explanation. The actual God. The real God. The God who makes leviathans and sets the morning stars and holds the Pleiades in place and still, noticed one man sitting in an ash heap and came personally to speak to him. The suffering had not taken Job further from God. It had taken him deeper in. After God finished speaking with Job, he turned to Eliphaz and said something none of the friends expected. I am angry with you and your two friends. You have not spoken the truth about me, the way my servant Job has. The friends who had spent weeks constructing careful theological arguments. The friends who had quoted divine visions and ancient wisdom. The friends who had been absolutely certain that Job was wrong. God told them they had not spoken truthfully. And that Job, the man who had argued, demanded, complained, cried out, said he wished he had never been born, had spoken truthfully. Because Job had been honest. He had refused to put God in a box. He had demanded the real God, and the real God had come. Go to my servant Job, God told the friends, and he will pray for you, and I will accept his prayer on your behalf. The man in the ash heap was being asked to intercede for the men who had accused him. When Job prayed for his friends, God turned his situation around. Not before he prayed. When he prayed for the very people who had wronged him. That was the moment. And everything that had been taken was given back, double. 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 2,000 oxen, 2,000 donkeys, 7 sons, 3 daughters. The daughters were given names that the record preserves. Jemima, meaning dove. Keziah, a fragrant spice. Karen-Happuch, a vessel of beauty. And Job gave them an inheritance alongside their brothers. The man who had lost everything was now, by God's hand, richer than before. Not because God owed him. Not because the suffering was a formula that produced a reward. But because God is the kind of God who does not end stories in ash heaps. He restores. He renews. He gives back. Not always in the same form. Not always in the same timeline. But the God of Job is a God who brings things back to life. And Job lived another 140 years. He saw his children's children to the 4th generation. He died old and full of years. The ancient phrase for a life that has been completely, abundantly lived. Job's story is not just ancient history. It is a mirror for every generation. The accuser said, Job only worships you because of what he gets from you. Take away the blessings and see what his faith is really made of. That accusation is still being made today. Not just about Job, About you, the accuser still whispers, "You only believe because life has been good to you," or "Something has gone wrong," which proves God has abandoned you. He twists faith into a transaction. He reframes devotion as self-interest. He plants doubt in the gap between what God has promised and what life currently looks like. But Jesus came as the complete opposite. Where the accuser points out your sin and your failure, Jesus defends you. The scripture says, "If anyone sins, we have an advocate before the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous one." On the cross, Jesus did not accuse. He absorbed. He took every charge that could be leveled against us and answered them all at once. When the accuser points to your pain and says God has forgotten you, Jesus points to the marks in his hands and says, "You are known. You are mine. You are not forgotten." Job's story does not give us a tidy formula for suffering. It does not say, "If you are faithful, you will not suffer." It does not say, "If you suffer, you are not faithful enough." What it says is far more honest and far more powerful. God is present in the suffering. He permits what he could prevent. He shapes what he allows. And he does not owe us an explanation for every chapter, but he is the author of every chapter. Job said in the middle of his pain, "He knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold." Not if he tests me. When? Job knew that what was happening was a test, not a punishment, not an accident, not evidence of abandonment. A test. And he knew what tests produce in people who do not break under them. Gold. The God who permitted the suffering was the same God who set the limit on it, who said, "Spare his life," who watched every moment, who counted every tear, who had the restoration already planned before the first messenger ever arrived at Job's door. That is not a cold God running an experiment. That is a God who loves the person in the ash heap more than the person in the ash heap currently believes. Job's journey ends not in explanation, but in encounter. He never received a full account of what happened in heaven. He never read the first 2 chapters of his own story. He never heard the wager. He never learned that God had called him blameless, that his suffering was not punishment, but a testament to the genuineness of everything he had built with God over a lifetime. He just suffered, and questioned, and held on, and encountered God in a storm, and was restored. And that, without the explanation, was enough. The same is true for you. You may not receive the explanation for the season you are in. You may not, this side of eternity, understand why it happened the way it did. You may sit in your ash heap with broken pottery in your hand and friends who say the wrong things and a silence from heaven that feels like abandonment. But Job's story says, it is not abandonment. The God who made the morning stars and the Leviathan and the mountains and the deep ocean has not taken his eyes off you for 1 second. He is present in the storm. He is present in the silence. He is present in the ash heap. And he is coming to speak. He always comes to speak. And when he does, everything changes. You are never alone. God's love is greater than any storm you face. And your Redeemer lives. Subscribe right now. Every week on this channel, we bring you the stories of Scripture written thousands of years ago for the exact season you are living in today. Stories of people who sat in ash heaps and encountered God and came out the other side different. You do not want to miss what is coming next. Share this video with one person who is in their ash heap right now. Someone whose world has come apart. Someone who needs to hear that the silence is not abandonment. That the storm is not the end. That the Redeemer lives. Send it to them today and leave a comment. Tell us, which scene spoke to you most? What is the thing you are trusting God with in this season? Say it out loud, because sometimes naming your ash heap is the first step to leaving it. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are not being punished. You are being formed. And the God who restored Job is the same God who has your name on his lips right now. Your Redeemer lives.